Welcome to Dialogue. Today's topic is part of an extensive series we're doing on the modern dating crisis. The moment you start trying to forge a meaningful partnership today, you just hit a wall. It's this profound, frankly, tectonic shift in how human connection even works.
It really is tectonic. That's the perfect word for it.
We're talking about a change that has completely transformed dating, intimacy, and the very concept of partnership, and it's all happened within the span of, what, a single generation.
It's been incredibly rapid.
Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this shift, which feels less about finding the right person and more about operating within a fundamentally new and often very unstable system.
That feeling of instability, that sense that the ground has shifted beneath your feet when you're looking for something durable, that is absolutely real.
So it's not just in my head.
Not at all. I mean, previously, relationships operated under the weight of shared, clear expectations. There was a community structure. Now we are adrift in a sea defined by radical individualism, digital speed, and an overwhelming, honestly, a paralyzing quantity of options.
And it's so crucial to recognize this as a systemic issue. We're going to dissect the fundamental collision, the cultural, the psychological, economic, and technological forces that created this new reality.
Exactly. It's a collusion, not a single cause.
So if you are one of the millions of people out there asking, why does dating feel impossible right now, this conversation is for you. We need to look beyond just personal failings and understand the specific, measurable cultural components that are driving that intense feeling of instability and chronic uncertainty.
To really grasp the scale of this transformation, we need to quickly anchor ourselves in the past. It's hard to see how far we've drifted if you don't know where the shore used to be.
Okay, so where was the shore?
Well, think about relationships just 2 or 3 decades ago. They were stabilized by these invisible but incredibly powerful structures. We call this the traditional roadmap.
A roadmap. I like that. So what was on it?
The first and maybe the most powerful governing factor was the subtle but persistent pressure of community involvement.
That's fascinating, that idea of community pressure. It wasn't a formal law or anything, but if you started seeing someone, your neighbors knew, right? Your family knew, your work colleagues likely had some idea.
They absolutely did. That external expectation created guardrails. It wasn't about being nosy necessarily. It was about a shared social fabric. That communal awareness created a soft pressure toward, well, commitment and longevity.
So you couldn't just ghost someone when your entire social circle knew you were going on a third date.
It was much, much harder. There was social cost. And alongside that, you had shared foundational values. These were often rooted in regional identity or faith structures or a more rigid, understood concept of family life.
And these all provided structure.
They provided structure, but the most important stabilizing factor was the existence of clearly understood expectations. Everyone knew the stages, the milestones, the appropriate speed of development. There wasn't a constant negotiation of, what are we?
That roadmap was clear. It detailed the expected steps, from just meeting someone, to progressing through courtship, to defining a committed partnership. And it often happened within socially accepted timeframes.
Yes. There was a consensus on what serious meant, and crucially, what came next. You knew the path.
Okay, so that was then. Now contrast that with the current environment, because it feels like the complete opposite.
It is, in almost every way. We now live in a landscape that's structured around speed and radical autonomy. The governing factors are completely different.
Dominated by, what, infinite options?
Infinite options, first and foremost. Options we can access instantaneously through digital interaction. And then you have a constantly churning set of cultural norms where last year's relationship trend is this year's social faux pas. It's impossible to keep up.
And the modern individualistic mindset just permeates everything. The priority is almost always self-discovery, right? Self-actualization, personal opportunity maximization.
All ahead of the partnership.
Far down the list of priorities. The result is simple. The old governing factors, community, and fixed expectations, they've largely dissolved. They're gone.
Let's use that navigation analogy to make the shift starkly clear for you because it really crystallizes the difference.
Okay.
Previously, navigating the relationship journey was like following a well-marked map, a paper map. The route was prescribed, the destinations, marriage, partnership, cohabitation were known, and you had clear mile markers to gauge if you were on track.
And if you strayed too far off that path, someone from the community, a family member, a close friend, would generally notice and inquire.
They'd pull you aside.
Right. And that served as a subtle mechanism of accountability. A little course correction.
Today, that map is gone. It's been replaced. We don't have consensus on what serious means, let alone what comes after that.
So what do we have instead of the map?
Instead, we're operating with a global positioning system, a GPS system showing millions of potential destinations, every single person within a 50-mile radius updated in real time.
So it's not just showing one route.
It shows hundreds of alternative routes every single second. There is no prescribed path, no universally agreed upon speed limit, and the entire journey is now just a constant, exhausting decision point.
The anxiety then comes from the fact that every choice you make is burdened by the knowledge of what you might be missing out on.
Precisely.
It sounds liberating to have infinite choice, but in practice, it's truly exhausting
Yeah.
and often paralyzing.
And that paralyzing effect brings us directly to what we can call the central paradox of modern dating. This contradiction sits at the very core of the instability that everyone is feeling.
Okay, let's unpack this. On the surface, the promise is obvious. We possess more choices than any previous generation in human history.
It's not even close.
You have the ability to connect with thousands of people globally, regardless of your immediate social circle, all with the tap of your finger.
Yet this abundance, and this is the counterintuitive part, it leads directly to profound uncertainty. Psychologists who study decision-making call this choice overload or the paradox of choice.
I've heard of this. It's when you go to the supermarket to buy jam, and there are 100 options, so you leave without buying any jam.
That's the perfect analogy. When the sheer number of options exceeds a certain threshold, our ability to confidently select any option diminishes. We fear making the wrong choice because the potential alternatives we abandon feel just too vast.
So apply it to dating.
Yeah.
If I meet someone great and we are connecting really well, instead of thinking, wow, I'm lucky I found this person, the modern anxiety is
this the best I can do?
exactly.
Yeah.
Statistically, there is likely someone better on the next swipe, and if I commit now, I'll never know.
Precisely. You lose the confidence that any single choice is the right one because the market is continuously refreshed with new inventory. And this paradox, it feeds directly into the difference between superficial connection and genuine intimacy.
Which we absolutely must distinguish to understand this crisis.
Yeah.
They are not the same thing.
Not at all.
We are undoubtedly connected. I mean, global superficial connection is instantaneous and pervasive. We can maintain contact with hundreds of people at once through various apps and platforms.
The illusion of community?
Yes, but the evidence suggests that genuine, deep intimacy, the kind that requires vulnerability, sustained time, and accepting shared uncertainty, that feels increasingly rare.
It does. The ease of connection has masked the difficulty and the necessity of achieving true emotional depth. We've mistaken one for the other.
And why is that? Why doesn't one lead to the other?
Because the superficial connection available digitally offers a kind of emotional substitute. It's a low-friction dopamine hit that mimics the reward of intimacy without requiring any of the actual work of vulnerability. It's like eating candy instead of a nutritious meal.
And it's addictive.
Highly. And this is where we see a huge behavioral conflict emerge in people.
The data is pretty clear on this. When you survey people, they overwhelmingly proclaim a desire for meaningful, committed, stable relationships. They want depth. They want the security that previous generations seemed to find so easily.
Their stated goal is clear.
But their daily behavior often fundamentally sabotages that emotional depth. It's all in favor of managing their risk and maintaining those infinite options we just discussed.
And that is the heart of the cognitive dissonance at play. People say they want one thing, but their actions are optimized for something else entirely.
Okay, let's ground this in a specific, relatable scenario, because I think people listening will recognize this. Someone genuinely wants a long-term partner, but their dating strategy is fundamentally structured around hyper-optimization.
Ah, yes, the hyper-optimization strategy. This involves maintaining multiple low-effort connections simultaneously. So they might be actively texting 5 different people, scheduling 2 first dates a week, and keeping 3 previous connections on ice just in case.
On the back burner.
Exactly. And why do they do this? It's not necessarily to find the perfect partner. It's to manage their sense of personal risk and avoid the emotional vacuum of being alone. It's a defensive strategy.
So they are investing very shallowly, but across a wide field. It's like they're treating their emotional portfolio like a diversified index fund.
That is the perfect way to put it, which ensures they never suffer a total loss, right? One person ghosts them, still have four others, but it also ensures that no single investment receives the critical mass of effort required to truly appreciate and value.
Because genuine connection requires singularity.
It requires prioritizing one person enough to weather the inevitable storms. If your effort is dispersed across five people, that critical investment necessary for a deep connection cannot flourish. They are inadvertently sabotaging the very goal of meaningful partnership they claim to seek.
It's the constant checking of the rearview mirror. Even when a promising connection starts to form, the perceived cost of closing off those other five options, it just becomes too high.
The opportunity cost feels massive.
So the effort required for a singular commitment starts to feel disproportionate to the perceived reward. Because the market is right there, perpetually open, promising an easier, low-effort alternative just to swipe away.
And it is absolutely crucial that we realize this unstable landscape isn't the fault of one generation or one gender or one technology.
Right, it's not that simple.
It's a collective consequence. I like to think of it as a four-car pileup. You have cultural, technological, psychological, and economic forces all colliding at the exact same time. We have to dissect these drivers because understanding them proves that the crisis is systemic, not merely the result of a few individual flaws.
So it's not just people are flaky now. There are reasons for the flakiness.
There are deep structural reasons.
Okay, so let's start with the first car in that pileup, the cultural bedrock. You mentioned this massive tension at the foundation of modern life, hyper-individualism versus the need for interdependence.
Yes. Hyper-individualism is arguably the defining mindset of the current age. We are taught through media, through education, through social philosophy, that personal fulfillment, absolute autonomy, and relentless self-actualization are the highest virtues.
The main character energy idea.
Precisely. Your life's mission is to become the fullest expression of you, regardless of any external constraints or obligations.
Which, on paper, sounds incredibly positive. Self-improvement is great. But where does the conflict arise when you introduce the concept of partnership into that world?
The conflict is fundamental. It's a direct collision. Because true, committed partnership requires emotional interdependence. It has to.
The we has to exist alongside the me.
And sometimes ahead of the me. When you commit to someone, you are consciously choosing to prioritize the relationship unit's health, its sustainability, its shared trajectory. This necessitates compromise. It necessitates sacrifice of some personal autonomy and the routine prioritization of that we over the me.
And in a culture that constantly celebrates personal freedom and endless opportunity, that requirement for compromise, it can translate directly into a feeling of restriction, even suffocation.
It's seen as a loss. If autonomy is the highest virtue, then interdependence feels like a direct threat to one's core identity and, crucially, to one's future potential.
This creates what you call the commitment as risk mentality.
Exactly. If the core cultural message you receive daily, from every direction, is that you must maximize personal happiness and seize every opportunity the global market presents, then locking down one partner feels less like a secure foundation.
And more like closing the door on a potentially better future option, a more fulfilling one, a more aligned one, a more optimizing one.
So commitment gets recoded in our brains. It's not stability anymore, it's opportunity cost. It's a massive gamble that might severely limit your future fulfillment rather than the safe harbor it was traditionally perceived to be.
And this fear of opportunity cost keeps relationships perpetually provisional, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like they exist in this state of soft commitment where everyone keeps one foot out the door just in case a better deal comes along.
We see this expressed in subtle ways. For instance, people might refuse to share finances or fully integrate their social circles even years into a relationship.
Because that adds friction to a potential exit.
It increases the friction. They're maintaining their autonomy as a form of insurance against the relationship's eventual, almost expected failure.
Okay, now let's overlay that cultural pressure with the engine of technology, which just actively exacerbates all of these anxieties.
Yeah.
This is the second car, the technological factor, the commodification and comparison cycles.
Right. Let's start with dating applications. At their core, they are efficiency tools. They are designed for volume, for velocity, for efficiency, and in doing so, they take human beings, these complex, unique, messy individuals, and they reduce them to interchangeable data points on a carousel.
A spec sheet.
A spec sheet. The mechanisms of continuous swiping, the profile filters, the matching algorithms, they inadvertently commodify people.
When you look at someone's profile, you're not seeing a person. You're seeing a product listing. Height, salary, hobbies, a few carefully curated photos. It encourages a consumer mindset. Do I want to add this to my cart?
Exactly. And when people are treated as interchangeable goods on a shelf, their perceived intrinsic value plummets. If they exhibit one flaw or one hiccup, if their communication style isn't perfectly calibrated from the first message or their job isn't quite what you hoped, the immediate low friction instinct is not to understand or repair.
It's to go back to the catalog.
You return to the market and find the next item on the shelf because the inventory is infinite. This transactional framework makes sustained effort and vulnerability feel completely unnecessary. Why would you invest in repairing something when replacement is a single tap away?
And while the apps are commodifying people, social media is acting as the engine of chronic comparison and dissatisfaction. It's setting the price for all the products on the shelf.
A completely unrealistic price.
We are exposed to a constant, relentless stream of highly curated highlight reels. The perfect proposals in front of the Eiffel Tower, the impossible travel photos, the meticulously filtered images of domestic bliss from people we barely know.
This creates profoundly unrealistic benchmarks for what a successful relationship should look and feel like on a day-to-day basis. You are perpetually comparing the messy, occasionally boring, emotionally difficult reality of your own relationship.
Which involves awkward silences and disagreements about who takes out the trash and necessary emotional exhaustion.
You're comparing that reality to someone else's 5-second, perfectly lit anniversary post, and of course your reality is going to fall short.
The gap between that curated ideal and your lived reality feels enormous. It fuels the belief that something must be wrong with your partnership or your partner because it doesn't match the impossible standard flashing across your phone screen 24/7.
And this cycle commodification, reducing perceived value, and comparison inflating the required standard is the engine behind the massive inflation of expectations.
It's like relationship hyperinflation.
It is. Since there are always more options visible, and these idealized relationships are constantly presented as normal and attainable, the standard required for a current or potential partner to be deemed sufficient rises dramatically, often beyond the realm of human possibility.
So people are unconsciously searching for a flawless, perfectly packaged, immediately gratifying partner who requires zero effort to maintain.
A standard derived entirely from filtered digital consumption, not from biological or emotional reality. It's a search for a unicorn.
Which brings us squarely to the third car in the pileup, the psychological factor. This is the shortening of our collective fuse,
Yeah.
the shortage of patience.
Yes. Our entire society has been methodically engineered around instant gratification. Every piece of technology, every service, from two-day shipping to immediate content streaming, reinforces the psychological tendency that if a task takes more than, say, 5 minutes, it requires substantial effort.
It's inefficient or difficult, and therefore should be abandoned for an easier way.
And this spills directly and catastrophically into our relationships.
Because building a deep, functional relationship is inherently an analog process in a digital world. It is the absolute antithesis of instant gratification.
Completely. It requires time, it requires effort, repeated vulnerability, and most importantly, immense patience to weather the inevitable uncertainty, the conflict, and the lengthy, frustrating process of truly integrating two lives. You are building something complex, something that takes years to solidify.
But if that patience is lacking, and for so many it is, people quickly adopt what you could call the drop and revert mechanism.
The drop and revert, I like that. At the first sign of real difficulty, a serious misunderstanding, a minor argument that suggests a core incompatibility, or even just the natural loss of that initial intoxicating chemical excitement.
The honeymoon phase ending.
Yes, they drop the connection instantly. They revert back to the pool of infinite options rather than investing the emotional capital required for repair or negotiation or just simple patient growth.
It becomes so much easier to replace than to repair. And this behavioral pattern is rationalized by that hyper-individualistic mindset we talked about.
Of course. Why should I struggle with this when the path to my personal maximization suggests an easier, better option is available immediately? It's seen as a smart, efficient choice.
And this lack of patience is dangerously intensified by the ubiquity of temptation.
It's gasoline on the fire. The instant access to new connections online provides an incredibly easy out. The digital gateway is always open, ready to provide a fresh hit of low-friction attention and validation.
It makes it exponentially harder to sustain effort in the face of the inevitable mundane challenges that characterize any real long-term connection. The grass always seems greener when the swipe feature is just a tap away, offering emotional validation without the heavy demand of conflict resolution.
It's a constant escape hatch from the necessary work of partnership.
And finally, this ease of digital access brings us to the fourth and final force in this collision: the new, much broader landscape of infidelity. The erosion of boundaries has changed what fidelity even means.
Precisely. We need to expand our definition beyond just physical acts. The convergence of digital communication, the hyper-individualistic view of emotional needs, and the accessibility of temptation means that workplaces and digital spaces provide completely new, pervasive avenues for both emotional and physical transgressions.
The issue is the severe structural erosion of boundaries.
That's it. Traditionally, infidelity often required physical proximity, a real opportunity, and significant logistical effort. There were natural barriers to entry.
You had to actually go somewhere, meet someone, and risk being seen.
What does the digital environment change? It lowers the emotional and logistical bar to almost zero. Private, discrete digital communication, encrypted chats, disappearing messages, subtle, direct messages on professional platforms like LinkedIn.
It allows individuals to cultivate deep, emotionally intimate connections with others, entirely separate from their primary partner, often without any overt physical contact ever taking place.
And this is the rise of the emotional transference relationship, the outsourcing of emotional labor.
So a partner might stop sharing their worries or their professional stresses with their primary partner because they've found a discreet, highly attentive digital confidant who is always available and never makes demands.
And this transference of emotional labor undermines the primary commitment severely, often long before any overt physical action takes place. These channels didn't exist in previous generations in the same pervasive, low-risk way. They allow for this slow, secret blurring of emotional lines until the primary partnership is essentially gutted from the inside out.
And this creates a sense of perpetual availability and vulnerability, even in supposedly committed relationships.
It does. The technological environment means that the possibility of a boundary transgression, either physical or deeply emotional, is present 24/7. It's in your pocket. This makes the act of trust and the necessary vigilance required to sustain healthy boundaries far more demanding than it's ever been.
It demands an intentionality and a level of transparency that, again, often runs completely counter to the prevailing cultural pressure for total personal privacy and autonomy. It's another direct conflict. So let's try to synthesize this. When you put all four of those forces together, the hyper-individualism prioritizing the self, the technology that commodifies people and inflates our expectations, the psychological shortage of patience, and the digital erosion of boundaries, the result is the lived experience of the modern dating crisis.
That is the formula. The primary structural outcome of this convergence is an era of unstable connections. That's what it produces.
And why are they so unstable?
Because the traditional roadmap dissolved, because commitment is now feared as a risk, and because emotional investment is constantly being undercut by the pull of infinite options. So relationships lack the foundational shared values or the communal pressure that once kept them steady, even when difficulties arose.
They're structurally unstable by design.
By design, because the exit ramp is always visible and completely friction-free.
And when dating feels this chaotic and painful, the natural, almost protective human tendency is to search for a singular fault, a simple answer.
Of course, we simplify the problem by blaming an external party. This is what leads to those repeated, frustrated laments we see everywhere, online and offline, often framed as these simple gender conflicts.
Where are all the good men? And where are all the good women?
Those questions are entirely valid expressions of real frustration, but they fail to capture the systemic nature of the instability.
Because if literally everyone across all demographic lines is complaining that there are no good people left, then perhaps the problem isn't the people.
Perhaps the framework itself is flawed. The conclusion is clear. The crisis is not the fault of single gender or a single technology.
It's a collective consequence. Every individual choice you make, the swipe, the pursuit of autonomy, the quick exit at the first sign of friction, it interacts with these multiplying cultural and technological forces. It increases the overall complexity and instability of the system for absolutely everyone involved. Your actions contribute to the environment you're complaining about.
And this is a powerful realization for you, the listener. The difficulty you encounter isn't necessarily due to a personal failing. You could be an excellent, emotionally available partner, but you are operating in a relationship market that is designed for quick turnover, hyper-comparison, and the minimization of investment.
The system is fundamentally rigged against the kind of deep, patient investment you are trying to make.
It is. The currents are all pushing you in the opposite direction.
So for someone actively navigating this landscape right now, just understanding these forces is the first essential step toward sanity.
It is.
To recognize that the difficulty is systemic, not a personal reflection on your worth or your desirability,
Yeah.
the hyper-choice environment we discussed, it demands a proactive choice to slow down, to be intentional, to re-engineer your entire approach.
If the modern crisis is defined by a lack of emotional depth, despite extraordinarily high surface connection, then the necessary antidote involves a conscious reversal of these four forces.
So you have to actively push back.
You have to actively push back. It means prioritizing quality over quantity. It means actively and intentionally resisting the technological forces of commodification and instant gratification, which takes sustained vigilance. It's not easy.
That sounds like a monumental task. I mean, what does that intentionality actually look like in practice? How do we counteract that powerful psychological and cultural pull?
It requires making a conscious choice to pursue interdependence, even when the broader culture is intensely pushing you toward hyper-individualism and endless self-maximizing autonomy.
So you have to choose the we.
You have to choose the we, and you have to keep choosing it. It involves defining and protecting boundaries against the digital erosion of fidelity we talked about. Recognizing that trust is earned through shared presence and transparency, not just a lack of physical transgression.
And it means reclaiming patience. That feels like the biggest one.
It might be. Resisting the temptation to swipe away difficulty. Recognizing that real intimacy is built in the mundane, frustrating moments, navigating the hard parts that social media never, ever shows you.
It requires intentional vulnerability.
And accepting that commitment, while it potentially restricts the pool of future options, it massively expands the potential for future depth. That's the trade-off, and you have to believe the depth is worth more than the options.
You have to choose to see a potential partner not as a data point or a product listing,
But as a complex project, a project that requires long-term investment. This conscious shift in mindset from one of consumption to one of construction is the only way to build stability in an age of unstable connections.
All right, let's briefly recap the core drivers of this modern dating crisis. It is defined by the dissolution of the traditional relationship roadmap, the paralyzing paradox of choice, leading to profound uncertainty, the dominance of hyper-individualism which actively fears interdependence, and the technology that fuels both comparison and the commodification of people.
We've established that unstable connections are a collective consequence, driven by forces far larger than any single individual. And this leaves us with a final, provocative thought. What does it mean for us as individuals when patience, sustained emotional effort, and singular commitment are redefined as radical acts of rebellion in a culture obsessed with immediate gratification and endless, friction-free opportunity? The true deep dive begins with questioning how deeply our individual desires for autonomy are actually sabotaging the very need for connection we all share.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, let us know in the comments what really stood out to you in this conversation, and if there's any related topic or new topic that you would like covered in a future video.